first of all, I want to commend the panel. We get panels through here all the time, but this is probably as good a presentation as we've had on an issue in a long, long time. Part of this whole problem is the fact that convincing America and different segments of America how dangerous of a situation this is. And one of the ones I've been focused on over the years and have been somewhat successful but not completely successful is to get a better handle on what colleges and universities are doing. The colleges and universities, as all of you know, are a really target-rich place for the Chinese. They show up with money, and as was pointed out here, colleges and universities respond to money, whether it's from their donors, from their alumni, or from the Chinese showing up with money. And most Americans are shocked to hear that we have hundreds of thousands of Chinese students studying here in the United States, with only a tiny, tiny fraction of U.S. students studying in China. And there's a huge difference. The Chinese students here are not studying ancient Greek history. They're here with the STEMs and the national security issues and everything else. And each and every one of them, whether they like it or not, is an agent of the Chinese Communist Party. When they go back, we all know they get debriefed, and any information that they've garnered here in the United States becomes a property of the Chinese Communist Party. So we've seen example after example of Chinese showing up at a university, coming up with millions of dollars, and they get a chair, they get an endowed chair, they get an entire institution within the institution focused on what they want to have focused on. So I guess the question I'd have for all of you is, and first of all, admittedly, the universities have an entirely different view than we that work in the national security lane do of this. They when you sit down and talk with them, they believe, and a lot of them, I think, are very sincere in their belief that, oh, in academia, we're all together. This is one big world, and we should all use this knowledge that we have and share it with each other, regardless of national security implications of it, whether it's designing computer chips or designing factories that manufacture arms. So give me some thoughts. How do we bring the universities on board to have a better understanding of, number one, how dangerous China is, and number two, how they are exploiting us, even without our knowledge in a lot of instances, in taking what we have? Mr. Mattis, let's start with you.
Well, one thing I can tell you is that 10 years ago, this was a completely different problem than it is today. There are actually resources, there are companies, there are more experts, there are journalists, there are plenty of places where universities can go. So a dearth of expertise or a lack of information is no longer the problem that they once faced, or it wasn't as severe. The second, as I think my friend Jeff has said, that the grant reporting requirements from the federal government actually have to be rigorously pursued and adhered to. We would consider it corruption if it were a defense contractor or others that were not providing the correct reporting requirements. And because, as I think you've heard from every single witness, the problem here is the corruption in the rules and the corruption of the process. And as long as that process is clear and it has rigor, then it will provide the basic level of protection. I think the other piece that's there is to go back into your home states and to talk to the public universities and engage them and ask, well, what have you done for compliance? What do you do about these things? Because I know from my time on Capitol Hill that those conversations actually did bear fruit, and they did drive public universities to think about this. That's a good
suggestion. Thank you. Mr. Stoff?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, a lot of it, I agree, a lot of it has to do with raising a level of understanding and awareness. And one of the challenges is that the U.S. government needs to share a lot more information on the kind of investigations. For example, the OIGs do a lot of interesting things that are at civil and administrative levels that don't reach, that are not just simply not public record, right? Because they're not a criminal indictment. And that's not a bad thing. But what happens is the universities are not seeing, and they're not really incentivized to see what's happening on their campuses and the type of malign influence and the way China can come in and divert and influence the research that's going on. There is some information that the government has that I think needs to do a much better job in sharing that. I think there also needs to be much more scholarship on the topic itself, where we demonstrate activities, behaviors that China exerts that is fundamentally against the principles and values of academic freedom, transparency, reciprocity, and integrity, which is a core to what universities talk about of their mission. And there needs to be a lot more effort looking at where and how this is being done to show this is affecting us all, including on your campus, so that we take more collective action. Thank you.
Dr. Hart?
Thank you. I endorse the comments that have come before and would like to just add one point. We need a scalpel for this, not a sledgehammer. It is in U.S. national interest to keep the student pipeline open. We're in a pitched battle for global tech supremacy. For decades, Beijing stole our IP. Let's steal their best engineers. You know, China's national engineers developed the DeepSeek AI model that surprised the world this week. You know, we'd be better off if the engineers behind that were working here in the U.S. and U.S. universities and U.S. companies. So it's important to keep that in mind. Those student exchanges are a way that we can siphon off some of Beijing's top talent. So we want to make sure that for the students that are here, for the researchers that we want, that they feel they are safe in the United States, they understand how to follow the rules, and they feel their civil rights will be protected. We can beat Beijing at making Chinese scientists feel safe.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hart. There's a flaw, however, in your suggestion, and I think probably everyone in the room knows it. When a student comes over here, they got to go back. If they don't go back, there's a family there, and we all know what the Chinese government does to families. They do it across the oceans, and they do it even here in the United States. So that's a great idea. The problem is we're dealing with a malign institution here. We're not dealing with people like Americans who say, oh, yeah, you're free to move and do whatever you want to do. They will take it out on the families. We've all heard stories of that. So, but you know, your thoughts are well taken. That it would be good if we could reverse the tables. I'm not so sure that we can do it in the same manner. My time's up, and Dr. Lin, we'll get to you too again. We're going to do a 5-minute round, and if we got time, we'll back up. So, Senator Shaheen.